All right. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. It's my pleasure to welcome you to yet another Jumuah Gems. The last of every month, the last Friday of every month, Mina kind of takes over Isna's Friday reflection and we do our own spin. So it is my pleasure and honor to introduce to you our guest who will be speaking to us today, Salima Haj Majid. Salima is our Regional Executive Committee Chair for the Mid-Atlantic region. I've had the pleasure of working with her and meeting her, being at camp with her, working on some program stuff. And she is a 17-year-old high school senior from the DC, Northern Virginia area. Outside of school, she is just as awesome. She is a poet and a writer and aspiring fashion designer, performing artist. I've had the pleasure of actually listening to some of her poetry at one of our Mina camps, and mashallah, I'm so blown away by everything she is doing and she's aspiring to be. Today, she'll be reflecting and sharing with us on the value of time, the importance, how to use time wisely, how to set and achieve goals, and all this wonderful stuff. So without further ado, Salima, please take it away.
Jazakallahu khairan, Sister Ivana. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Like Sister Ivana just said, my name is Salima Haj Majid. I'm so honored and excited to be here and excited to share with you all a few of my thoughts about this theme. And I just want to jump right in with a question that can get everybody thinking. And that is, what does it mean to spend time? Because spending time is a phrase that we use a lot, right? But what does it actually mean? And once you think of that, you're probably going to start thinking of, well, it means you're doing something. And so my next question for you is to think about, what is doing? I know we're getting kind of philosophical and abstract right from the start. But I think that this is really important to assess, especially when we're talking about time within quarantine, an era of our lives where time looks very different than it usually does. And spending our time looks very different than maybe it usually does. So if you're constantly doing, right, then how do you identify what actions that you're actually doing are beneficial and what is kind of just added space and waste into your life? Because we've been in quarantine for almost a year. Most of us have been in quarantine for almost a year now. We're in 2021. SubhanAllah, time went by really quickly, and also it feels like a lifetime, right? But we're also at this stage where there's not a clear endpoint or a new reality that we can see yet. There's a lot of hopes, a lot of aspirations, a lot of finish lines that we're hopeful, praying for and imagining, but we don't really have clarity. We don't really know, most of us at least, don't really know what our lives are going to look like in a few months, in a year, whatnot. And therefore, faith is one of the most important parts of our lives right now. It's the one thing that's allowing us to keep going, allowing us to continue to follow COVID guidelines to keep ourselves safe, and restricting ourselves from doing the things that we usually love to do, because we are trying to hold on to the idea that, we're staying healthy, we're staying safe, and a new reality will come. But how do we use this time to the best of our ability to increase that faith and then also increase the goodness in our life? So that's what I want to talk to you guys about today, inshallah. So one thing that I wanted to start us off with thinking about when it comes to time, first of all, it's a very abstract topic. Like, we could have every Jumuah Gem till the end of time about time, and we would never even finish talking about it, because there's so much to dissect. I mean, from the spiritual perspective, from a philosophical perspective, from a scientific perspective, right? There's so many. But there's one key spiritual element that I want to focus on. And that is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is recreating the universe. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala destroys and recreates the universe at every beat in time. Every moment in time, everything is destroyed and reborn, and reborn again. That to me is like the most hopeful statement on earth, because that means anything could change tomorrow, either, for the better, meaning, COVID could disappear, or something amazing could happen to me tomorrow. I could suddenly become, getting straight A's without trying, whatnot. Anything could happen, right? And sometimes, something could happen that you don't expect and could be difficult for your life. But there's this sense of Allah's in complete control, right? And sometimes in quarantine, we feel as though time has stopped. We feel as though our lives aren't really moving anymore. We're not in normal school. We're not with our friends. We're not accomplishing the goals maybe that we set to accomplish in 2020 or even in 2021 before we knew all about this pandemic. And we feel like we're in this gap in our lives. I know that I definitely feel that way, especially being a teenager. And I'm at this time in my life where usually things are moving very quickly. And I feel like I'm at this stagnant spot. And the routine and the repetitive nature of how we're living can be refreshing to some people, right? Maybe it calmed people down. It allowed them to find some sort of stability. And for others, it's like driving you crazy. Like you can't deal with the same old every single day anymore. You just, you want to break out of the cycle. You want a new sense of reality again. And no matter which one, it can be hard to feel like we're missing out on aspects of life, or that too much time is passing, or not enough time is passing, or we're not passing quickly enough with the time, right? It's this hard, very chaotic and difficult reality to grapple with. And so I just wanted to ground us all for a second. In this moment, and think, doesn't matter how you've been feeling about the way you've been spending your time, or how you've been feeling about how your pandemic experience has been. It may have been really difficult for you and your family. It may have felt really easy, wherever you're at, to just focus and see, okay, let's think about personal development for a second. Let me put away everything the world is throwing at me right now, all of the challenges. And let's just focus on, how am I, if I'm talking to myself, how am I, Salima, how am I going to become a better person when I leave this this almost hibernation, right? How am I going to get out of quarantine, go back to some new sense of normal, and not feel like I just picked up where I left off? Because too much time has passed for that to be the case. That would be so much time wasted. We have to make the most of this time, and use this ability to be at home, be with our families, whatnot, to be with yourself really and reflect. And when you look at the translation of Surah Asr, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is basically telling you that time is the worth in your time is judged based off of how you spend it, right? It seems like a very simple concept. How well you spent your time is based off of what you did with it. But in reality, it's something that we have to be thinking about in each moment for it actually to become a true and tangible element of our lives, right? Like each moment. And what I'm doing actually valuable? Is it getting me towards my spiritual goals, my academic goals, my social goals, whatnot? So I want to talk a little bit about the practical application of this, transition a little bit out of the abstract. So let's think of it as a timeline, essentially, right? Who was I when I entered quarantine, and who am I now? Compare and contrast. You can make a Venn diagram. You could just think about it in your head. When I first entered quarantine, it was 1 week after my 17th birthday. And subhanAllah, in a week and a half, I'm turning 18. So a lot has changed, right? A lot has changed. Who was I then? Who am I now? And then eventually you're going to be thinking about, who do you want to be when you leave this, when you leave your house and go back to some new sense of normal, inshallah. So when you think about who you were then, I want you to think about a few things. The first thing is, what traits did you like about yourself before quarantine? Like maybe I could say, I had some really great study habits. I was acing all my classes. Or maybe you were really like socially on top of the world. Like I have the best friends around me. They're helping me out so much. I'm gaining so much. There's so much added value to my life from when I spend time with them. Or maybe it's, you're helping your mom a lot around the house, and you have a great relationship with your mom. You're being super helpful. And then also think about how have you or have you not amplified those good habits in quarantine? Have you maintained them, and why or why not? Maybe I could say, well, my study habits have declined because I'm in virtual school and it's a whole new ball game and I don't really know how to do it. It takes a whole new set of skills. Or maybe I'm not having the best people around me because there are no people around me, and it's hard for me to stay in contact with people through text or through FaceTime or whatnot. Those are completely valid reasons why you would have declined in your practice of those good habits. But it's good to acknowledge them, because we're going to get to that later about how can you get back on track with them. And then think about the opposite side of it. What things about yourself or about your life were you not proud of before quarantine? And have you changed those habits? So maybe I could say, I was spending so much time with my friends that I didn't spend any time with my siblings, or I was spending so much time with my friends that I didn't spend any time with my parents, or perhaps I was studying too hard that I wasn't taking care of myself. There's a lot of routes it could take, or perhaps it could be something, an even larger struggle or a smaller struggle. It all depends on the person. It could be spiritual, academic, personal, social, familial, etc. But have you changed those habits, or are they still happening now, or have they even gotten worse perhaps in quarantine? Before quarantine, I know so many people that have said this, before quarantine, my sleep schedule was like non-existent. Like I was staying up all night studying, whatnot, going to school. Then in quarantine, my sleep schedule is even worse because now I'm at home. I have no motivation. I'm just like, I'll stay up till 4 a.m. Right? Okay, so now your bad habit has gotten even worse. How do you pull that back and get back on track? And the reason that this is important, to tie it back to what I was saying before, is because you have to identify what your own doing is. When I wake up, what am I going to be doing that day? Because what goals do I have as Salima? What goals do I have that I need to be working towards every day? Because it's not going to be the same as Sister Ivana or somebody else, right? It's not going to be the same as my mom or my sister. Everybody is individually their own person. They have their own things that they need to be working on. And that's how you identify your productive doing, because you have a life, right, that you're trying to live, a goal that you want to get when you're out of quarantine, perhaps, or maybe in quarantine still. And everyone needs a game plan for how to get there. So this is almost like the blueprint of your game plan. Who were you then? Who are you now? Who do you want to be then? Then you can fill in the dots, right? You can fill in the gaps in that roadmap. But that's the base structure, okay? So to fill in those spaces, I'm going to give you a 5-step process to increase goodness, inshallah, in your daily life, and then to get rid of those bad habits. And obviously, they're broad steps because it's very hard to give you a direct formula because everybody's different. But inshallah, this can provide some of you with some guidance. So the first step is naturally to identify the problem. Identify the problem or identify the good habits. So, like I said, I can go back to the sleep schedule example. The problem is that, let's say the problem is that I'm staying up till 3 a.m. every night, okay? And I'm not getting enough sleep. And maybe the good habit that I'm identifying is before quarantine, I was consistently reading Quran every single day. That was my good habit. But I've declined in being able to do so, or I've been consistent, but I want to increase it. So the next step 2. So step 1 was identify the problem or identify the good habit. Step 2 is finding one short, simple, doable, consistent thing that you can do to get towards stopping the habit or to increase the good ones. For example, let's use the sleep schedule example. Okay, I need to sleep at a normal time. So I'm going to start sleeping at 1 a.m. Push it back 2 hours. 1 a.m. you have to put a time limit on it as well for 2 months. Okay, 1 a.m. for 2 months. Or for the Quran example, I'm going to read 2 surahs every night for 2 months. Whatever is doable for you, you have to look at yourself and assess spiritually and practically and academically and whatnot. Where are you at? What can you actually do? Set realistic goals for yourself. Step 3. So step 1 was identify the problem or identify the good habit. Step 2 was finding that simple, practical, consistent thing that you can do. Step 3 is find someone to hold you accountable, to help hold you accountable, essentially. That could be your parent, a sibling, a friend, a mentor, whoever it is for you. If it's an academic goal, perhaps it's a teacher. Spiritual, maybe it's a spiritual mentor that you have, whatever makes sense for your life. Find someone that you can call up or a text or whatnot and say, hey, I'm working on this with myself. Can you help me out? Can you remind me about this, or check in every now and then, a few weeks, and see how I'm doing? That way, you have some added motivation to keep that going. Step 4. So step 1 was identify the problem or identify the good habit. Step 2 was one short, practical, consistent thing you can do. Step 3 was find someone to help hold you accountable. Step 4 is mark a time, like literally mark a time in your calendar where you're going to check your progress. And that's when you're going to assess how you're doing. So like I said, maybe for the example I gave, it was 2 months. So 2 months later, I'm going to sit and think, okay, did I actually do this? When I track my success, was I actually able to go to sleep, 2 hours earlier? Was I actually able to complete reading that surah or those 2 surahs every night? And if the answer is no, why? And if the answer was yes, okay, then good. You set a realistic goal for yourself. If you weren't able to complete it, then you can put another time limit on it. Okay, well, I'm going to really try for the next 2 months, but you're going to modify the plan. Okay, actually 2 hours earlier wasn't really working out. Let me do 1 hour earlier. Or 2 surahs wasn't really working out, so let me do 1 surah. And if the answer is yes, that you were able to stay on track, then you can move to step 5, which is develop the next phase, like the plan for the next phase, and repeat this list. So now what you're going to do is you're either going to, let's say the problem was very easy to fix very quickly. You've already fixed the problem. Okay, well then, khalas, move on to another one, because everyone has many things we could all be working on. Or maybe it's something that was a gradual process. And so in that sense, you're going to find a way to increase that one short, consistent thing. Okay, now I'm going to read 3 surahs, or now I'm going to go to sleep at 11:30 p.m. or whatnot, and do another time limit on it, find someone to hold you accountable, and repeat the whole process again. And if you build this cycle, right, this repetitive cycle, then the cycle itself becomes a habit. And it's in a strange way, it almost becomes addictive. You can't stop because you're constantly developing as a person. And it's very exciting. It's a very exciting thing to feel like you set a goal and you went out and you achieved it. I know for me that's like very satisfying, because all your hard work pays off, and it's good because you can track actually your success. So you're going to think, okay, well, what else can I do? Then you're going to add on another thing. What else do I want to work on? You're going to add on another thing. And then inshallah, if you plan out your time right, then even when you get out of quarantine, forget quarantine, this 5-step process still works. I think it's easier right now because a lot of us have a little more downtime to be able to really focus on self-development. But even when, Allahu Alam, you're back to some sort of normal, some sort of regular, you can continue in these habits. Inshallah, you should continue to fix the problems, continue to increase the goodness. And when you do these 5 steps, right? So now you have your roadmap, you have the 5 steps. The 5 steps are going to fill in the space in between your blueprint. Now that you've done that, you're able to identify your doing, right? Now you've been able to define, what does well spent time look like for me in my life with my circumstances in this new reality that I'm living in? And inshallah, you're going to live another new reality, right? Because time is going to continue to change and be different and shift. And so you will be able to feel like no matter what life throws at you, no matter how chaotic or convoluted your life begins to feel, that you still know, I know what my doing is. I know how I want to be spending my time. I know that for me, it was she mentioned it in my bio, part of my doing is writing. I have to be writing consistently. It's part of who I am, and it helps me to work out my thoughts. It helps me to be creative. It helps me to continue to feel like I'm growing as an artist. And so that's a part of my doing, right? But somebody else's doing could be, well, they need to run every morning because otherwise they really feel like they're not improving on their physical health. So you have to identify that. And once you do, once you can kind of collect those thoughts and create this painting for yourself of who do you want to be each day. Inshallah, I pray that that this weird new reality of time becomes somewhat easier. And this new existence, it's not even new anymore, but it still feels very strange, right? That it feels a little bit more like you feel grounded, that you're not floating in the air and being thrown every which way by things that are completely out of your control, but that you have this sense of, no, my feet are planted in the ground, and I can, I could be, at college, or I could be at home, or I could be on vacation or whatnot, and I would still know in general what my doing is. So I'll leave you all with that, inshallah. And my final reminder for you is to be patient with yourselves. Everybody is struggling to figure out how to be productive in this time, not only be productive, but to be peaceful, which is equally as important. And so find a balance for yourself. How are you going to be improving, but also how are you going to be taking care of yourself? And hopefully, if you plan it right, those two things are not contradictory. They will connect. Being productive will also be, how are you, improving upon yourself, and how are you taking care of yourself? And inshallah, with that, I hope that everybody out there continues to stay safe, to stay productive, to stay healthy, inshallah, to stay peaceful. And I encourage you guys to try out my 5-step formula, but also to continue to research and learn on your own about how you can be continuing to grow in this time. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. Jazakallahu khairan, everyone, for listening. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I absolutely loved your reflection. I loved it, what you shared about not only just realizing the importance of time, but and even inspire us to want to do better, to use our time better, but that your tips were so practical, and everyone can adjust them to their own lives, their own personalities, their own needs and goals, right? And I like that you mentioned this is a process. It's not something that you try it once and you failed and then you say, oh my gosh, I give up. I can't do this, right? So that's so important for all of us to be reminded of, that it's not a problem solution, but it's a full process. And it's going to take a bunch of times. And then sometimes you're going to be doing great. And then maybe a few months later, you're going to find yourself back working on the same issue. And I also love that you connect it to the larger goal of the bigger question of who you want to be, because it's not even just about one moment today, tomorrow, but that it all amounts to something bigger. Who do you want to be as a servant of God, as a Muslim, and as a person in this world? Alhamdulillah. There's some comments on our YouTube page saying that this has been an incredible advice, so practical. Alhamdulillah, thank you so much. If anyone has any questions, I am monitoring the YouTube page. Please put your comments in there, or any questions for Salima. She has a few minutes, inshallah, that she might want to share a few extra things if you have anything specific you wanted to ask. So I'll just give it a minute or two to see if anyone wants to share anything. But in the meantime, Salima, thank you so much. This has been incredible. I actually joke sometimes in our chats here with Minna. I'm like, Salima is who I want to be when I grow up, right?
No, you're who I want to be when I grow up.
Alhamdulillah, may Allah make us the best for each other. And
Ameen, inshallah. Ameen.
All right, guys, any questions, guys and ladies? If not, then I think we're okay here to close. Again, Jazakallah khair for spending your time, your precious time, this past 20, 30 minutes with us. Oh, here, we have a question, actually. If someone does fail, how do you not lose hope? Any personal advice from your experience?
That's a wonderful question, mashallah. So I think that an important part of it is not assessing it based off of absolutes, right? Failure and success. Because it's very difficult to live your life that way. I promise you that. If everything is, okay, here's my goal, I don't reach it, then I failed. Or I reached it, then I'm ultimately successful. The vast majority of your life will align somewhere in between. It won't fall to either of the extremes, right? And the fact that you tried means you didn't hit failure. It's impossible. You couldn't have tried to be better and then you ultimately failed, like you did nothing good with your time. They contradict each other. So the first thing I would say to you is you didn't fail if you weren't able to complete your goal. And then I would just say that, then you try again, right? You try again, you come up with a new plan, and you think, what didn't work the last time? It's very important that you practically assess, what is it about this plan or about my life that didn't work? Like I can use the sleep example again. The problem was that I had no, every night me and my sisters watch a movie and we stay up till 3 a.m. and I never told them that I didn't want to do that anymore. And so then I never went to sleep earlier. Well, then now you know the problem. Like you have to communicate with your family that this is your plan. There's definitely some underlying issue that's holding you back if you're truly trying. So I would just say that don't be too hard on yourself. Think about it as a learning experience, as a growing experience. And an opportunity to get better the next time, but you didn't fail if you truly tried.
Yeah, and one of your steps wasn't it to have a buddy, right? So
Yes.
asking someone not to only maybe even just hold you accountable, but to help you out. And so when you do feel like you failed, to remind you of all the good things that you did as well,
Yeah.
right?
Exactly.
Someone said, I am so motivated to set some goals for myself now. Jazakallah khair. And then we have another question. What are things you do to stay focused when trying to fill one of those goals you set? Fulfill, sorry.
To stay focused.
Mm-hmm.
Well, personally, I have a very type A brain. So I'm very structured person personally. So I like to create like lists of things I should do that day. And perhaps I'll include that goal on my list. Like it's something that I have to do, just like my homework, right? Like it's a to-do, it's a to-do on my list of things to do for the day. So that's how I continue to remind myself. But how do I stay focused? I think that an important part of all of this is remembering that you're doing this, like you're doing it you're doing it to increase your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but you're also doing it for yourself, right? It's this is an act of self-care. Self-development is an act of self-care. You have to, think, okay, well, I'm going to do this because I want to be a better person. I have goals that I want to achieve in life, and I'm going to go out and do them. And that sense of ambition, I guess, it's not everybody's ambitious naturally. I'm a naturally very ambitious person, but I think you have to find that place within you where you feel energized to do something just because you know it will add goodness to your life, because that's the best form of motivation, I would say.
Thank you. I don't see any other questions. Last call, last opportunity. All right. Jazakallah khair again, Salima. May Allah bless your time and all your efforts that you do. May Allah make your time a source of goodness for you in this life and in the hereafter. Bless your family for allowing to share you. As I'm sure, time is so precious and so short. So anytime we get with you, we are blessed. Jazakallah khair and Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.